All right. Thanks everyone for attending my talk. I really appreciate you coming. This is really cool to actually be giving a talk in person again. It's been a while, so really, again, truly appreciate everyone coming. What I like to do kind of before I get into things is discuss the why, like why I decided to do this talk or why I decided to do some research. And at this point, I'd been red teaming for quite a while now, and probably with maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. So within the last couple of years, all of a sudden we're starting to see CTI become a popular thing, right? Cyber threat intelligence. Before that, we're red teaming without CTI. We're just, red teamers doing our thing. We're researching and trying to find ways to exploit systems or break into networks. And we're looking at blog posts and we're looking at talks and, anywhere we can find other red teamers or hackers, red teaming. And so it's kind of strange to me that, we weren't already trying to get real cyber threat intelligence to create our threat emulations, right? And our campaigns. So with red teaming. So it's strange to me for a couple of reasons. One, I had a US Army human intelligence collection background. So as a soldier in the Army, in intel, they kind of pounded it into our head that intelligence drives operations. You didn't have an operation unless you had intelligence. You can't just go and find a target based on nothing, right? You need to know who your enemy is, what your enemy's doing, what you need to know about your enemy, or your adversary in this case. So that was kind of strange. And then the other thing was that, as red teams, we're supposed to train our defenders to, stop real world adversaries. Well, how do we train our defenders to stop real world adversaries if we're not really emulating our adversaries, if we're just kind of winging it? We're not actually trying to figure out what our adversaries are doing. So that's kind of where this all came about. And so I decided to, kind of look back into my experience in the intelligence community to see if there was something I could grab from there that I could bring into purple teaming or threat emulation that worked there. So this is just kind of my thoughts on how we might be able to move some of that stuff over and effectively use it. The goal here is just to kind of get, you questioning some things and seeing if there's ways that we can go about this differently, and maybe we can come together as a community and overcome some of the problems. So that's this talk. Purple Team PIRs, what adversary emulations need from cyber threat intelligence. So a little bit about me. I'm Antonio Piazza. I've been doing offensive security engineering for quite some time now. I've been on a few red teams from DoD to Cleveland Clinic to Box to Zoom. And most recently, I'm the purple team lead at Nvidia. So went from only really doing red teaming, no like penetration testing, strictly red team operations for the majority of my offensive security career, into now more purple teaming for detection validation. That's kind of what I'm trying to build at Nvidia. What else about me? I have 10 GIAC certifications. I just recently graduated from SANS Technology Institute with a Master's of Science in Information Security Engineering. So that was a long, fun 2 years. That finally came to an end. I'm a father, I'm a husband, father of 4 teenage girls. So that's really fun. I have a dog. I don't know, I like heavy metal music, all kinds of stuff. So anyway, that's enough about me. The agenda. So what we're going to do is we're going to discuss I'm going to define what PIRs are, because some of you are probably like, I don't even know what a PIR is, which is fine. And then we're going to talk about what the problem is for cyber threat intelligence for purple teaming. Like what is the problem we have here? Why isn't things kind of clicking the way maybe they could be? And then what do purple teams actually need from cyber threat intelligence? And then finally, how can we get what we need? Okay, so what are PIRs? So is anyone in here from the intelligence community or had intelligence community experience? No. Okay, so everyone's probably like, what the heck does PIR mean? So it's priority intelligence requirement. And there's a lot of different intelligence requirements priority just means these are the priority. These are the main ones that we want to have answered, right? So in the intelligence community, at least in the DoD side of things, you have your command or your commander who wants certain questions answered, and they want those questions answered in order to plan their operations. Again, if intel drives the mission, you really can't be a commander and plan an operation without having some answered questions about the adversary or about the battlefield, right? So you have your command and you have, your collectors. So I was a human collector. So I had to take a look at a database that was filled with intelligence requirements, including commanders' PIRs or priority intelligence requirements, and determine if I had any assets that could answer those questions. And the asset is going to be mission dependent. As an interrogator in Iraq, my assets were the detainees that I interrogated. As if I was doing source operations, then I'd be spy handling. So it'd be my spies that were running around. And if I was debriefing, it would just be people, other DoD folks that were traveling that might have placement and access to the intelligence information that we need. And that's the key for an asset. They have to have placement and access to get the information to answer the commander's questions. So it goes from the commander down to the collector and then to the asset, and that information goes back up. So I would basically, if I had an asset that could answer a PIR that I found in the database, I'd go and try to, question them and get that answer. If I got it, I'd write it up in a report. It'd go up to an analyst. An analyst would take a look at it, do their analyst magic and say, hey, this is great information. We'll give you an A. They would give us like a grade, or it'd be, oh, this is okay. It gives a C. If it answered, a full PIR, you'd probably get an A. If it answered part of it, you might get a B. If it didn't answer it, it was other intelligence requirements, you get a lower grade. So if we take this model and we think about it in our purple team campaigns, who would the commander be? Who would be the person that has the questions about the adversary that they need answers? Who would the collector be? And who would the assets be, right? So this is kind of just a little juxtaposition here. So let's say on the DoD intelligence side, the commanders are like, that's the multinational forces Iraq symbol. That was General Odinero at the time, who was the commander, right? They're the ones who have, again, all the questions like, I need to know this about the adversary. Well, the purple team or the person planning the purple team campaign is going to be your commander. That should be the commander, right? You're the one who needs to know the information to be able to emulate the adversary, right? So who's the collectors? Again, on the defense intelligence side, got all kinds of different intelligence groups, human intelligence. That was what I did. We collected. Well, our collectors, if you think about it, and purple teaming are these CTI products that we pay for, these vendors, right? They're the ones that we're paying that promise us to give us the information we need to know about the adversaries that we can emulate them. So that's our collectors. Those are the people that should be collecting the intelligence for us. And finally, the assets, again, depending on the mission, detainees, spies, other DoD employees, those are the people that have placement and access to the information. Well, who has placement and access to adversary information? Usually organizations who've been breached, right? Or consultants who go in and do incident response or incident handling, that go in and they get to see all the, the logs and everything and all the artifacts that the adversary left in a breach, right? They should be able to collect all that stuff and then give it to the CTI, our collectors, right? So now we know who kind of is involved in this PIR scheme, this intelligence collection scheme. What is the intelligence that we really need, though, from our collectors? So some of you might be familiar with this. This is the Pyramid of Pain, and it SANS has it published on their website. And I think it was David Bianco's conception originally. And this is just a kind of a what do they call it? A tool where you can see kind of the stuff that you really are going to get from CTI to help your detections campaign, right? Your detection building. So it just goes from bottom to top, you know, from trivial to tough for the stuff that you can get, right? So hash values, IP addresses, domain names, these are all our indicators of compromise. And this is really easy stuff. This is what we can typically get from CTI. This is what they're giving to us right now, right? And at the top, it says TTPs are tough, tactics, techniques, and procedures. I agree, but it's a little bit more, I guess you can break it down a little more, right? And I think Chris Peacock, actually, who's giving a talk tomorrow, has broken this down on, I think they have on Skype's website, probably a better graphic than I have here. But you got your tactics, your techniques, and your procedure. Now, I argue that tactics and techniques are actually pretty easy. And I say that because you take a look at the CTI products that you're getting. Again, you're getting IOCs and all that stuff easily. Sometimes you're getting malware analysis or a threat actor report that does discuss the tactics, right? And then when we're doing red teaming or doing threat emulation, tactics are easy to emulate. We know that an adversary is probably going to do code execution or lateral movement or persistence and privilege escalation. Those are our tactics, and those things we can just guess at what they're doing and you know which tactic they're going to use, or a handful of tactics, because we kind of can get an idea of what their operational goal is, right? If they're going their financial kind of gain, they're probably going to be going after some way of, you know, maybe ransomware or making money in some way. So we kind of understand like these tactics. It's a lot easier than the techniques. Techniques are a little more difficult. Again, some of your CTI products will give you techniques that the adversary is using as well. So I kind of don't agree that all of these things are hard, but the procedures really are the hard part, right? That's what we're not getting from CTI. And that's really what we need from them. That is literally what our test cases are for doing detection validation testing or threat emulation. We need to know the procedures that the adversary actually conducts. So that to me is the hard part. So just to kind of get on the same page, what tactics, techniques, and procedures are, I'm sure you are all pretty aware of it, but I just wanted to kind of go, just in case some people don't have all the knowledge on that, and go a little deeper into it. So the MITRE ATT&CK, this is just a slice of the MITRE ATT&CK framework, right? So you have across the top, going horizontally, that's your tactics. And that's the why part of it, right? This is why the adversary is executing a technique, right? So this is like answers the question like, I conducted, let's say, which one of them? Credential. I wanted to steal credentials. So that's your tactic, right? That's what they wanted to do. That's why they're going to then conduct a technique to steal credentials. So your techniques now fall vertically underneath the tactic, and then there's sub techniques that are kind of parallel to the techniques. We don't need to get into that, but those are your how, right? So how the adversary conducts a tactic. So if, let's say the tactic was credential access, we could say dumping OS credentials to achieve credential access would be a technique of stealing credentials. And then you can go even further down the sub technique, dumping LSAS memory, right? So again, the tactics are the why, the techniques are the how. One thing good to note, I think some people know, other people don't, is if you take a look at the kind of from left to right on the matrix, the risk level goes from low to high. So your techniques down on the left-hand side are like recon and stuff. I'm not too worried about that in an organization versus all the way to the right, impact, right? That's going to be your highest risk. So just kind of throw that in there. So we know what tactics are, we know what techniques are. Procedures are the detailed steps that the adversary takes to conduct a technique. So it's It's more deeper into the how. It's actually step by step. What does the adversary do? What does the malware do to, to dump LSAS, right? And there's a bunch of different ways. There's a bunch of different procedures that any of these techniques can be conducted. So those are really important when we're trying to do detection validation testing. You can't say that you have a good detection for, credential stealing tactic if you don't test all the different possibilities. And if you're trying to emulate a specific adversary, you want to detect the way that they are known to conduct that tactic and that technique, right? So you need to know their procedures. So this is exactly, the procedures are exactly what we need again, and that's what we're not getting. So that's really the problem here with the CTI is we're not getting those procedures. Again, IOCs are great. They help us to, instantly block domains and IP addresses, but that's not really good for threat emulation. That's not where we need to be. Okay, so where are the procedures if you were taking a look at the MITRE attack matrix? So if you click on one of the techniques and you scroll way down to the bottom of the page, you'll see references. And these are all your articles and your blog posts that if you read every one of them, some of them might actually have procedures, right? Some of them might be linked to a specific threat actor or a piece of malware. But they don't necessarily have the one we're trying to emulate all the time, right? Like it's a limited list. CTI really should have those procedures for it, but they really don't right now. So in order to kind of, if we wanted to do threat emulation right now, we'd have to go dig through all these articles and see if we can pick out procedure data to run our threat emulations. And to me, there's got to be a better way for this, right? So this is just kind of an example, a walkthrough of a threat emulation that I've done, just kind of giving broad overview of what we had to do to conduct it. So like the first step, you're going to identify the APT or malware that you want to emulate. You're probably going to pick malware at this point because you're not going to find really, I haven't had luck at all finding procedural level data for an APT or a threat actor group. Malware, hit or miss, but the APT probably not going to find. So in this case, I'm going to pick black byte malware. So you're going to get the tactic, techniques, and procedures from your CTI, but you're probably not going to get the procedures. You're probably, again, going to get the tactics, and maybe more times than not, you'll get the techniques. So now we kind of take a look at on a MITRE attack matrix kind of color chart or something. We fill it in and we say, all right, I'm going to start all the way at the right again because that's the highest risk stuff. So I'm going to start at impact. Is there anything that black byte does for impact that we know of, at least from a technique standpoint? And what I found was service stop technique, right? So now I have my technique. How do I go about actually finding the procedures for that technique? So again, I got my technique, 1489 service stop on the MITRE matrix. I have 36 articles to go through and see if I can pull procedures for service stop. Now, again, none of those are for black byte. So I'm not getting exactly what black byte does. So I can't really emulate black byte, but what I can do is hope that I can get enough procedure data out of these references that I can actually pull together a campaign that at least covers as much of the service stop procedures as I can find, right? Maybe you're lucky and you have another person on your purple team and you can divide that up 18 each. I did, fortunately, but obviously it takes some time. So what are we getting? You're going to get like a wide range through these references of detail and procedural data. Some of them are going to be very detailed. Some of them are going to have like no data at all, no procedure data at all, which is weird why it's a reference there. So here's a couple of examples. Sometimes you get a list like the one on the left there, of services that the malware stops. That's great, but it doesn't tell us like how they stop the service. Because again, there's many ways to stop a service, right? There's tools, there's API calls, there's command line calls. So we want to know how does this malware actually stop these services? But at least we can get a list. That's kind of cool. And then you'll see another one kind of has a narrative form, and they'll give you an actual command that they use to stop services. That's a little better. I wish we had a list that had both, but again, these articles vary depending on who the author was. They always have the IOCs in a nice little table for you, but sometimes you got to go digging to get these procedures. And then you got some really bad ones. Other than finding a dead link, which was changed, these are probably the worst ones I found, where you'll just get kind of like, oh, this one terminates processes and services related to applications, backup software, endpoint security, and servers. So, okay, now I got to go list all of the endpoint security services that could possibly be running, and it's just not helpful, right? I mean, it's sort of helpful, but not where I want it to be. And then some, it's just like, yeah, use the net stop command to stop these services. Like, okay, not helpful at all. And this to me is exactly what we need, right? This is a kind of a table with all of the services and the commands used to stop the services. This is, I don't remember, I should have probably wrote down who actually wrote this article, because they did it the best way, right? This is exactly what we need. Nice and packaged for us. Has the command, has the service name that's being stopped in a table. This is digestible, right? So this is what we need our CTI products to give us, though. I shouldn't have to go digging for all this stuff myself when we pay for that service. So can we start emulating yet? Not really. So this is just an example of Notepad++, where I was going through each one of those articles, and you can see the references I took off of MITRE, and I'm writing whatever they have on there, I'm pasting there. So you'll get commands and you'll get service names. So I have 18 different articles to go through. My partner has 18. We now need to put them together, and we need to go through and get rid of duplicates. And now we have a list. We can then take those, convert them into YAML, and put them into our Atomic Red team or into whatever repository for procedures that you want. And now we can do some threat emulation. So again, this is a very long process to emulate malware, not necessarily an adversary, and not even a specific malware. This is just malware that does service stop procedures, right? But at least we have some procedures. So how do we get what we need, right? Again, this is a lot of work ourselves. We might be able to get malware. We're not going to get our advanced persistent threats. I think I did spell that wrong. And we're not actually getting the malware that we're targeting that we want to emulate. So how do we go about getting what we want? And this comes back full circle to the PIRs idea, right? So we need to start being the commanders as purple team planners when we're planning our emulations. And if we're in organizations, we're paying for these CTI products, we really need to start demanding, and not just me, like everyone who does threat emulations needs to start demanding from their CTI products that we need these procedural data. We need the procedural data to really be able to emulate a threat. So we're happy that you guys are focusing on IOCs and you're getting us stuff to help protect our environment, but you're not helping threat emulation really in any way. CTI is not geared toward threat emulation, and we need to help push to let them know that it's important that they do focus also on threat emulation, because again, we're the ones that are validating the detections in our environment. And if we don't have the intelligence to drive that mission, then we're really just kind of making guesses. So where can the vendors get this data? Creating partnerships with our consultants that do incident response. To me, that's probably where they need to start. And I know there's probably some issues with incident response consultants that have NDAs in place that don't allow them to share, details. But I think that if we work again, put pressure on the CTR product vendors, maybe they can put pressure on the consultants that they partner with and say, can you rewrite these NDAs where we can at least grab all the procedure data and just redact anything that, PII or anything that might allude to a specific company that was breached. And then also our internal IR teams need to start sharing more, right? Like if you're getting breached, your incident response team can pull a lot of really good data out of there and it can be shared with the community. And that kind of brings me to the final point is like open source sharing. We have the Atomic Red Team repository, which has a lot of great procedures in it, but there needs to be a lot more. And I think as we start doing threat emulations, when we start getting real intelligence that is more threat emulation focused, we should start building that repository up and sharing it with everyone. Like here's, and tag the APTs, tag the malware now in the YAML files. Here's what, this is a procedure that we know that this adversary does. And start building that up. So now we have a really big repository to start testing our detection validation with. Another thing is I started to work on building a open source purple team execution framework on top of Mythic C2, just kind of at the beginning stages of that. I hope to really start dedicating some more time now that I am done with my master's degree and I have a lot more time on my hands. So working with Cody Thomas from Spectre Ops, he's real excited about the idea of possibly putting a purple team execution framework on top of Mythic. And my hope is not just to build an execution framework, but to actually like push this idea of open sourcing procedural data so that we can all start working together to really share, threat emulation procedures so we can really start doing what I think we can, the potential that we have for purple teaming for detection validation testing. So, yeah, and I'm always looking, anybody who is interested in this, again, this talk was just to kind of generate some ideas and hope to get some people interested in contributing to this in the open source community. So if anybody, feel free to contact me. Again, I'm Antman1P on Twitter.